there was body cam footage, police body cam footage that was released by the Miami-Dade law enforcement, the officers involved in the altercation that led to the detainment but not the arrest of Tyreek Hill. It has been released, and what I've noticed is the people that hate the police say that shows that it was terrible. The people that support the police say, well, something else happened. So it doesn't really change anything. But the video does show the events beginning with the motorcycle cop pulling over Tyreek Hill. It later shows the officer removing Tyreek Hill from his vehicle and forcibly bringing him to the ground before cuffing him. Now, the incident happened on Sunday, just before the Dolphins played Jacksonville in Week 1, and Tyreek played in the game. The Dolphins issued a prepared statement saying they were saddened by the altercation with police. Tyreek made the rounds, wallowing in victimhood, doing every interview he could possibly do. Now, Hill was pulled over for speeding. He told the reporters after the game on Sunday that he had no idea why the situation escalated to what ended up happening. So let us discuss. How do you assess the Tyreek Hill body cam police video, which is making the rounds? How do you assess it? So I've got Country Mile, Good Housekeeping, and Pyramid. And Pyramid, we will combine all of these things together, and we'll let her rip. We're going to let her rip. So first of all, putting this under the MALLER microscope and frame by frame, Tyreek Hill, let's just say, was not totally transparent and honest when he told the media that he was totally respectful from the start of what happened on Sunday, because the cam video showed something a little different. And so it's one of those shoulda, coulda, woulda. Likely been a simple traffic situation with an angry, grumbling police officer. Tyreek, there's conflicting reports about how fast he was going. The one that I'm going to go with is it was going 60 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. Now, there's other people saying he was going much faster than that, but we'll go with 60 in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. Now, Hill ends up, if you go and watch the video, even our blind guys, he ends up earning an assist in this story in terms of there was a spark to the fuse. There was a spark to the fuse here. You had a hothead cop, and Tyreek gets pulled over driving a $350,000 automobile. The officer approaches on a warm Sunday in Miami. The officer approaches his door, and he ends up having to tap on the window to have Tyreek roll down the window. So that's the first bad sign. That's the first bad sign. So that's strike one. Now, Hill responds with, "Don't tap on my window like that." So there's a little escalation. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not exactly complying. Later, he left his heavily tinted window up after initially rolling it down. And from the police that I've talked to, that is a universal sign of bad news if you're a cop. If you have a heavily tinted window and the window is up, you don't know what the person's doing behind the glass, so that's strike two. So eventually Tyreek put the window down. He then, again, put it back up, and so there was a back and forth there, and that escalated things a bit. Then they took him out of the car because of that. He wouldn't sit down, so you got strike three. But the whole point is this is a country mile from what he had said in the interview. Now, Tyreek made the rounds on the different TV stations, as we mentioned, wallowing in victimhood. And one of the things Tyreek Hill said in this media circuit that he was doing is he said, "I could have been shot if I wasn't famous," is the way he described it. And so that really stuck with me, because if you watch the police cam video, clearly Tyreek didn't watch it, because the cop, the main instigator from the cop side of things, didn't have a clue who Tyreek Hill was. One of the other officers was like, "You know who that is?" And the guy, "I don't know who that is." and he's a star player for the Dolphins. Shock. Are you telling me not everyone knows who the Miami Dolphins players are? Apparently not. The guy had no idea. But yet Tyreek has the chutzpah to say, well, if I wasn't famous, I would have been shot. Well, they didn't know you were famous. Maybe if you were famous, if they knew you were famous, they wouldn't have pulled you over in the first place, or they would have just let you go. And they didn't end up letting him go. But the attitudes towards this are wild. Listen, Tyreek was not the biggest a-hole in the world, right? He didn't comply, and he escalated the situation. The cop was a hothead and clearly had issues. He had some issues there. But my basic playbook, and I don't know if I'm right or not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've done things wrong my entire life. I've been pulled over in every time zone. You know that? Every time zone in the United States I've been pulled over for a traffic violation. I have always been, my parents yelled at me. Said, when you get pulled over, you roll your window down, you put your hands on the steering wheel, and make sure that the cop can see your hands on the steering wheel, and then you're respectful, right? Respectful and all that. And you don't talk back, and then you're usually going to be okay. Now, every once in a while, even that will not work. That will not work. If you want to fight the machine, the time to fight the machine is not while you're in the fire. That's not the time to fight the machine. But you had a couple of big ego people, and they were going back and forth. And then you had one of Tyreek Hill's teammates who pulled over and thought he was going to be the peacemaker. And then that escalated the situation because the cop was annoyed because he stopped and he didn't move fast enough. And so the whole thing went next level. All right, now, turning the page on that, we got a couple of things I want to discuss. Now, we go to the Jersey Turnpike where the Giants have decided they're not going to make a change at quarterback after the first game of the year. The Giants will stick with Vanilla Vic, Daniel Jones, as their starting quarterback. That comes from the embattled head coach Brian Daboll. They have no plans to sign another quarterback for competition. They're going to continue to rotate the backups between Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets. So the question is, why is Brian Daboll, at least publicly, sticking with Daniel Jones as the Giants' QB1 after a El Stinko performance against the Vikings? So I'm going to approach this way. I believe this is a good housekeeping response by Brian Daboll. Ergo, the Giants have made their bed of nails. The bed of nails is called Daniel Jones, and now they must sleep in it. And Daniel Jones is holding the Giants franchise hostage. He didn't play all that well a couple years ago, but the Giants stumbled into a playoff game, and they have to win a playoff game, and they were hornswoggled to give Daniel Jones a new contract. He didn't deserve the contract. The Giants' passing game was like 15th in the NFL the year they made the playoffs. I think it was actually worse than that. It was lower than that. I have to go back and check my notes. But it wasn't very good. They won. Some fluke things happened. They won like 9 games, I believe it was. They made the playoffs. But Brian Daboll is tasked with turning dirty water into wine. That's Daniel Jones, dirty water. And they are attached, for better or worse, they are attached at the hip. All right, final thought. We go to Maryland. Some fantasy football people very upset with Coach Harbaugh. What do you make of John Harbaugh? Not Jim, John Harbaugh, saying the Ravens did not bring Derrick Henry to Baltimore with the plan to give him 30-plus carries per game. This comes after the Ravens lost to Kansas City in the opener by a toe. And Derrick Henry, for a big stretch of that game in the second half, was an afterthought. So my position on this is that John Harbaugh is reminding those of you in the back of the room here that it's all about Lamar. A, B, and C is all about Lamar. He's really the featured running back on the Ravens, and it's like the tip of the pyramid. Everything goes through Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry is merely a supporting actor. They think he's got a little left, but not enough to be the featured back. And even though all those years in Tennessee, the argument was Derrick Henry was a grinded-out back that got better as the game went on, and when he got to around 20 carries, his production went up, that he wore down opposing defenders. Even with that background, the fact is that Derrick Henry has crossed the Rubicon, that he's past the threshold of sustained success, the amount of touches. And so Henry's going to have to take a back seat here. And for Harbaugh, it's all about that game script. It's all about the game script. Henry is going to have to pick up the scraps, and that's the way it goes.